Thank you very much indeed, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I'm very grateful for being able to call this debate on the impact of Cleat Hill pump incident on residents. And I'm very grateful also to welcome the Minister to her place. As she knows, I have a number of questions, some of which she will be able to answer, a number of which will be for other departments, but I'm sure she'll be able to pass those on to the relevant Minister. Madam Deputy Speaker, on Tuesday the 2nd of July, whilst drilling for the installation of a ground source heat pump in a back garden in a residential neighbourhood on Cleat Hill in my constituency, a reservoir of gas was encountered. This gas reservoir was at a shallow depth of approximately 100 metres. Subsequently, certain discussions, recommendations and actions were made by various parties in response. On Saturday the 19th of October, there was an explosion at the property that resulted in the death of two people, Paul Swales and Julia Harris. The blast happened close to where gas from the underground reservoir had been venting. By the time of the explosion, gas had been venting from the shallow reservoir for 109 days. Approximately 50 households were evacuated from their homes on Saturday the 19th of October, and for nearly 5 weeks now, my constituents have been living with relatives or friends, or, as in the majority of cases, have been living in temporary accommodation provided by Bedford Borough Council. I would like to take this opportunity to commend my constituents for their resilience to the disruption caused to their daily lives and for the anxiety that has been caused and continues to be felt by many. I would also like to commend the community and spiritual support provided by St Mark's Church in Brickhill, who have provided facilities, fellowship, food, and a focus for residents over these 5 weeks. And I would like to pass my condolences to the families of Paul Swales and Julia Harris. There are currently a series of investigations, including by the police and the Crown Prosecution Service, regarding the period from the encountering of gas on Tuesday the 2nd of July and the gas explosion on Saturday the 19th of October. Hence, the focus of this debate is on the circumstances and regulations preceding the earlier date and subsequent to the latter date. But there are some open questions that are on the minds of my residents regarding the period under investigation, which I believe are worth putting on the record at this debate. But I appreciate the Minister will not wish to comment at this stage. Which agency was in charge of making my residents safe after the discovery of gas on the 2nd of July? Which agency was responsible for signing off the mitigation of venting gas? Who, if anyone, was responsible for the venting of gas for the period between the 2nd of July and the 19th of October? Did the responsible entity have the requisite expertise to take on these responsibilities? What procedures were put in place to ensure the venting of gas in a residential neighbourhood remained safe? When residents provided concerns about the venting of gas, were the correct responses made? Which regulations were guiding the response by agencies from the 2nd of July, and were these regulations sufficient? My residents hope that the various investigations will be able to provide answers to these and to the many other questions they have raised. Pertaining to the current situation, the British Geological Society is today continuing to monitor for both gas in the air and in the soil in and around the 100-metre cordoned off area. Recent measurements have been consistently at negligible levels, but monitoring is continuing to take account of various climatic features. Tonight there will be a further meeting hosted by Bedford Borough Council, and I would like to record my thanks to the leadership shown by Laura Church, the Chief Executive of the Council, to Craig Austin and to the other staff of the Council for their considerable efforts on behalf of residents. These meetings are helpful in addressing immediate concerns, but there are some other issues I would like to raise today. First of all, regarding the return of residents to their homes. As might be anticipated, there are differences between residents regarding their confidence to return to their homes. Many are eager to do so. However, there are many residents who have considerable anxiety about a return, with concerns for their safety, the safety of their children, or for loved ones. I've spoken to residents. A major assistance in building that confidence would be for there to be an accountable, authoritative voice to, if you will, underwrite the assertion that it is safe to return. However, it seems that none of the agencies appear to have the combination of expertise and authority to make such a call. In the absence of this, the default may be that the risks of returning will be transferred from a responsible body to each resident, with potential implications for future insurance and other liabilities, and this clearly should not happen. So may I ask the Minister what steps she can take to end this Mexican standoff regarding advice on a safe return for residents to their property? And will the Minister urgently investigate in what form a responsible agency or authority could provide the underwritten reassurance that it is safe for residents to return? Now, over this period, Bedford Borough Council has incurred considerable additional costs and diverted many officers and staff to manage the needs of residents. These exceptional demands for expenditure and human resources came shortly after one of the most significant incidents of flooding in the area. In fact, the Met Office reported that Bedfordshire had its wettest September since record began in 1836, and much of that rain came in the very last part of the month and caused significant flooding. Now, as the Minister is well aware, there is a scheme, the Bellwyn scheme, that can be used to support local authorities with covering these exceptional costs. I know that the Department has been in discussions with Bedford Borough Council and that the Department is waiting to hear whether a formal application will be made. Now, I also understand that ministers are empowered by Section 155 of the Local Government and Housing Act of 1989 to decide whether or not to activate a scheme after considering the circumstances of each individual case. There is discretion here. And so may I ask the Minister that should the Council make a formal application, will she ask the Secretary of State to use the powers granted to her under Section 155 to approve the application by Bedford Borough Council? Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, the incident at Cleat Hill should also stimulate a review of current regulations to see if they are sufficient or if they should be updated. It may surprise you, Madam Deputy Speaker, as it did my constituents, that currently it is permissible to drill a hole 100 metres deep in your back garden without any permit and without any required notification. Such boreholes are considered permitted development. So may I ask the Minister, will she review whether the drilling of a 100-metre hole in a residential area should continue to be classified as permitted development, or if there should be a permitting or notification requirement? The Cleat Hill incident also raises some questions about the regulation of the installation of heat pumps more generally. Now, there have been more than 30,000 ground source heat pumps installed in the United Kingdom, and this is the first known incidence of a gas reservoir being tapped during the drilling for a ground source heat pump. The UK currently plans, however, to roll out many, many more heat pumps, a large proportion of which will be ground source heat pumps, in the effort to achieve net zero. Now, we must remember that boreholes are drilled for a variety of reasons, not just for heat pumps, and that the incident at Cleat Hill was about the drilling of boreholes, not anything specifically about the heat pump itself. But the Ground Source Heat Pump Association, which are not party to the investigation, wrote to me to say, quote, "While this is the first incident of its kind in the UK and is extremely unlikely to be repeated, we do not feel it would be appropriate to simply wait until the formal investigation has concluded." Now, the association goes on to say, quote, "On that basis, the Ground Source Heat Pump Association has communicated with all its members advising them to procure gas monitoring equipment if they do not already possess it. As a precautionary measure, we have instructed members to go above and beyond present regulations and guidance and to follow the procedures given in the borehole sites and operations regulations, which apply to coal authority areas when drilling boreholes for ground source heat pump ground loops at all sites. So in light of this, will the Minister ask the relevant government department to review the geographic scope of the borehole sites and operations regulations 1995 and see if these regulations should be extended to cover a broader part of the United Kingdom? And more generally, will she ask the relevant Minister to engage with the Ground Source Heat Pump Association to review and, where necessary, update the regulations and official guidance for the installation of ground source heat pumps? Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, as you might imagine from my residents who've been out of their homes for 5 weeks, there are some questions, practical questions, about insurance and about the impact on house values. And I'd like to put these on the record, although I appreciate there is limited scope for consideration for official support by the Minister. First is on the variation between insurers for the number of days a policyholder can be absent from their home. For some insurers it is 30 days, for others it is 60 days. So I wrote to the Association of British Insurers, who advised me that although these provisions remain in place, I quote, "Insurers will take a case-by-case approach and look to respond sympathetically where customers are likely to remain out of their homes beyond the limits provided for in the policy due to the evacuation," unquote. The second is the impact of the discovery of this shallow gas reservoir and the explosion, the impact it may have on the ability of my residents to obtain future home insurance and the premium attached to such policies. And I put these questions again to the Association of British Insurers, and I'm grateful for them for their response. Now, they cannot comment on individual pricing or commercial decisions by their members, but the association added, and I quote, "That said, we have raised the concern with our members and we are not currently aware of any general issues relating to Cleat Hill that would change the general underwriting approach applied to the area. It will be a commercial decision for individual insurers, and a range of criteria unrelated to the incident may impact on an individual's household's future risk. These will continue to be assessed by insurers on a commercial and competitive basis," unquote. And on house values, I'm grateful for the response to my question from the Honourable Lady's ministerial colleague, which states, quote, "On your question about the effect on property values, it is possible that there could be some diminution of property values. However, our expectation is that property values will return relatively quickly to comparable local levels." And I'm grateful to be able to put those points from the Association of the Minister on the record. Now, may I close my comments, really, about the importance of gaining a comprehensive understanding. In July of this year, my residents were alerted to the release of gas, but were content to return to their homes because they believed the situation was under control. Now they face a return to their homes in very different circumstances, with many more questions, with much greater anxiety, and with much less trust to take people on their word. Currently, the size and scope of the gas reservoir at Cleat Hill is not known. An assessment of the costs for a project to provide this information is being made, but is likely to be beyond the budget of the local authority. But the central issue remains about the lack of a comprehensive understanding of the status of the gas reservoir. How significant is it? What is its geographic scope? Did the period of venting create fissures in the layer of rock that had kept the gas from seeping into the soil? Did the 109-day period of venting release such a proportion of gas as to make the rock layer susceptible to collapse from the downward pressure of 100 meters of soil above? These are all very important questions to be answered. Now, there is an emerging plan for the use of gas monitors and alarms to be available to local residents and connected to a 24/7 response centre. This longer-term monitoring plan is designed to provide early alert to residents should there be any future change in detected methane levels. But can the Minister advise, if such a plan is put in place, which agency would be responsible for the ongoing monitoring? And can the Minister assure me that the Department will be able to seek expert advice so that the correct plan is put in place, both for the regularity of testing and the duration of testing, including of the stability of the closed borehole and of the rock layer containing the gas reservoir? To remind the Minister, the instance of breaking a seal on a shallow gas reservoir is historically extremely rare. It's not an exact comparable, but the drilling in 2007 of boreholes for geothermal energy in Staufen in Germany created significant problems a decade later. In that case, it was water that was released, not gas. But the incident reinforces the need, I believe, to gather now a comprehensive understanding of the situation at Cleat Hill. So finally, can I ask the Minister if she will instruct officials in her department to liaise with Bedford Borough Council to assess the proposals to conduct a full survey at Cleat Hill, to assess the scale and scope of the gas reservoir, and to see whether the cost of this survey can be borne centrally. Thank you very much indeed, Madam Deputy Speaker.